Qualitative interviews utilize open-ended questions to seek greater richness of data. They allow the interviewee to answer in their own words and from their own perspective. The best interviews are guided conversations that allow us to explore deeply meaningful themes. But when I say Skype interviewing, I'm referring to a specific form of interview utilizing synchronous video and audio over the internet. Although historically much of the research refers to Skype, in 2020 there are multiple platforms that can allow a qualitative interview to take place over the internet. These include Zoom, Google Meet, Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting, and countless others. One of the biggest advantages of online interviewing is the lack of associated travel costs. In addition to the financial benefits, online interviewing can allow for improved schedule flexibility for both the interviewer and interviewee. Interviews can be scheduled after work hours, in the evening, or whatever time is most convenient for both parties. Online interviews allow the interviewee to participate at home. This environment can be considered a safe space, both mentally and sometimes even physically. Even when not utilized, the knowledge that one can withdraw from the conversation by just clicking the button can provide a sense of comfort for the interviewee. Without the time constraints associated with travel, a researcher may be able to conduct a greater number of interviews, reaching far more participants than is possible with the traditional face-to-face interview. In addition, certain groups are more accessible to online interviews. These groups include those who are socially isolated, those who are geographically isolated, disabled participants, as well as parents and caregivers whose responsibilities will often keep them from traveling for interviews. It's safe to say we can all relate to the number one disadvantage of online interviewing, the technical issues. These technical issues range from internet connectivity, inaudible segments of the interview, or a lack of familiarity with the particular software being utilized. Often these interviews take place at home, which is rarely free from frequent distractions. Since most interviews online are done with a webcam framing from the chest up, a significant amount of nonverbal communication is lost. Proximity improves intimacy, and the physical separation of interviewer and interviewee may make it much more difficult to foster that meaningful connection often sought during qualitative exploration. The requirements of online interviewing can end up excluding older individuals less familiar with the ever-changing technological landscape. Also, those in a financial or geographic situation that deprives them of internet access can be left excluded with this interviewing method. Far more subtle than full-on catfishing, it is not uncommon for individuals to take on a virtual identity when interacting in an online environment. But it's important to understand that curated identities are not unique to this form of interview. Despite every precaution, the frequency of news reports detailing online hacking, celebrity photo leaks, and social media manipulation can lead to an innate distrust of the online environment. This can lead to participants less likely to engage in those conversations of sensitive topics. There has been some limited research exploring how the synchronous online interviewing format differs from the traditional face-to-face interview. Crowell and colleagues found that online interviews produced a decreased word count, fewer statements, and an increased rate of speech. Together, these three differences contributed to a shorter interview time. Despite these decreases, the researchers found that both types of interviews resulted in the same number of codes. And interestingly enough, the online interview was less dominated by the interviewer compared to the face-to-face interview. To address some of the challenges of this newer interviewing format, authors have made some suggestions to improve the overall experience. Since it has been found to be awkward providing a detailed informed consent over a synchronous interview, it's recommended that detailed information regarding the research is sent via email prior to the interview itself. Once the interview begins, you can briefly record the participant's consent. These initial email communications can also improve the rapport between you and the participant. The greater the communication before appearing on webcam, the more familiarity may be mutually felt. Myrick and Vladkowski also suggest that the ability to visualize each other's home environment may actually bring a more personal connection to the interview. In order to reduce the number of technological disruptions, it's important to ensure your participant has easy to understand instructions on how to use whichever platform you're going to utilize. Usually, programs need to be downloaded well in advance of the interview. It's often a good idea to conduct a dry run with a friend or colleague using the same software so any potential issues can be addressed. Nonverbal communication techniques can still very much play a role in conveying meaning in online interviewing. The tone, pace, and volume of your voice can be effectively varied. Also, if 2020 has been good for anything, it's improved our abilities to explore other ways to express ourselves, even under extreme conditions. Even though we have the ability to conduct online synchronous interviews just about anywhere with a Wi-Fi signal, it's still important to set up a proper environment conducive to the exploration of our research theme. While it has been mentioned that seeing a personal touch within the environment can improve rapport, it can also subliminally influence the interviewee on the other end. For this reason, adjust your environment as appropriate to limit potential influences. For example, when interviewing those from a lower socioeconomic background, it may not be a good idea to interview with symbols of opulence in the background, like a fancy light fixture or expensive art. Although it may seem obvious, it's essential that you limit your potential distractions. Young children are not usually helpful to your interview, and human's best friend is more concerned about the squirrel threatening your backyard than your need to have quiet. Online interviewing is an excellent method to add to our qualitative toolkit. Rather than a simple backup to a face-to-face interview, online interviews can be utilized to greatly improve our abilities to reach different segments of the population to address previously unexplored qualitative territory. Hopefully you found this brief introduction helpful for your future research. Now get online and happy interviewing.